It began as another elegant, music-filled night on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. Studio 6B glowed under the warm, signature amber lights, the perfect atmosphere for an intimate evening. The house band tuned their instruments to a gentle frequency, and the audience buzzed with excited, hushed anticipation. Tonight's guest, John Legend, the voice that had defined an era of modern soul, grace, and deep emotion. He was there primarily to perform a track from his new album, a personal project dedicated to themes of enduring love, quiet memory, and the inevitable passage of time. The show flowed effortlessly. Jimmy and John shared easy laughter, talked candidly about their recent tour stories, shared thoughts on family life, and reflected on fatherhood. It was smooth, genuinely joyful, and the epitome of classic Tonight Show energy and charm. But everything changed abruptly and completely when a quiet, unexpected hand rose gently in the audience. A young woman, appearing to be in her mid-20s, shy but carrying a noticeable inner steadiness, stood up slowly. She wore a simple white blouse and clutched something small and ancient in her hands, a faded, dark cassette tape. The cassette had a handwritten label, clearly visible, which read, "Church Choir 1989, Deborah Stevens." Jimmy paused immediately, his usual quick banter dissolving into curiosity. "Ma'am, what exactly is that you've got there in your hands?" The woman's voice trembled visibly, but held firm as she replied, compelled by her mission. "This tape, it belonged to my beloved mother. She was a church choir director for many years. She used to sing alongside your mother, Mr. Legend, back when they were young women in Springfield." The entire studio fell instantly silent, the memory of his childhood hometown hanging in the air. John's signature smile instantly faded, not out of discomfort or annoyance, but from deep, profound recognition. "Wait just a moment," he whispered, his famous eyes narrowing softly. "Your mom, her name was Angela's daughter?" The woman nodded, tears beginning to form quickly. "Yes, that was her. My mother passed away suddenly last year. She always told me a story, that she and your mother wrote a song together just once as young friends. A simple hymn that was never professionally recorded anywhere else. She said the song was about faith surviving terrible loss. I found this tape carefully tucked inside her old Bible after her funeral." The audience barely dared to breathe, mesmerized by the unfolding personal history. John leaned forward, visibly moved, his hands clasped tightly. "I honestly didn't even know that recording existed, ever." Jimmy, his voice dropping to a near whisper, acknowledged the weight of the moment. Would you like us to hear it, right now?" The woman nodded, her tears finally spilling over. She held out the old tape with profound care. A professional stagehand, quickly and quietly, moved to the desk, carefully placing the cassette in an old deck specially connected to the studio sound system. The lights dimmed further, concentrating the focus solely on the stage and the woman in the aisle. And then, through the large speakers filled with the static and hiss of time, came the sound. Two young women's voices emerged, two mothers, two long-lost friends, both gone from this moment, singing softly and perfectly in harmony. Even in the dark, the soul remembers its song. John's face instantly crumbled with emotion. He covered his mouth tightly with one hand as the room filled with the fragile, holy sound of pure memory. The audience sat completely, rigidly still. Not a cough, not a nervous shuffle was heard. Jimmy looked across at John, his own eyes glistening intensely. He whispered, "That's truly your mom's voice, isn't it, John?" John nodded, tears running freely and visibly down his cheeks, wetting his fingers. "I haven't heard her sing, just sing like that, since the funeral," he choked out. "And now, she's suddenly right here, singing to me." The tape continued its analog journey, hissing, crackling, and then abruptly ending. The sudden silence that followed felt like both a definitive ending and a profound, shared blessing. John sat for a long, heavy moment, his head bowed, his hands clasped together on his knee. He absorbed the decades of lost time in that silence. Then, With quiet, unmistakable resolve, he looked up at Jimmy, his intention clear. Can I play something on the piano, Jimmy?" Jimmy nodded without any hesitation, understanding this request was beyond permission. The Roots quickly dimmed their own band lights to nearly black as John walked deliberately to the grand piano. He sat down, took a deep, centering breath, and began to play. The exact, simple melody from the old tape, now reimagined with his signature mature touch. The audience watched, utterly spellbound, as he softly sang the hymn his mother and the young woman's mother had written together decades ago. Even in the dark, the soul remembers its song. The melody was simple, profound, and universally moving. John's voice, usually powerful, was restrained and fragile, weighted by memory. By the second verse, the young woman in the audience was crying quietly but uncontrollably, her head bowed. Jimmy had his hand firmly over his heart, tears streaking down his face, completely undone by the beauty. When John reached the final line, his voice cracked with emotion, but he smiled through it, delivering the message, "And love will teach the silence how to sing again." The piano chord faded gently into perfect stillness. For nearly 30 seconds, no one in Studio 6B made a single sound or motion. Then, slowly, respectfully, one by one, the audience rose to their feet. They stood not cheering for entertainment, but standing in pure, reverent silence. John remained seated at the piano, his head resting briefly on the keys, absorbing the tribute. Jimmy finally found his voice, softly saying, John, that was not just music. That was two mothers singing directly through their children." The clip immediately went viral overnight, achieving massive global reach. Millions shared it, calling it accurately the most human moment ever broadcast on live TV. The narrative of the lost song and the found memory resonated deeply with people across generations. John later announced that he would finish that song properly in a professional studio. He planned to record it with a full gospel choir, giving the hymn the powerful arrangement it always deserved. He decided to dedicate the final proper recording to Deborah and Angela, two friends whose quiet music had profoundly outlived them both. He titled the final track "The Soul Remembers," honoring the central lyric. Every performance of the song since, John begins it the same way. "This is the song that taught me that love never truly dies. It just finds a perfect new harmony to live in." The young woman, Angela's daughter, was escorted backstage. She finally had the closure she never knew she needed, a final conversation with her mother's voice. John sat with her for an hour, listening to stories of the two young mothers in Springfield. He realized that his mother's deepest self was preserved not in his fame, but in those shared private memories. The cassette tape was eventually digitized and archived by John's team. He made sure a pristine copy of the demo was returned to the young woman. He also kept a copy of the raw analog tape for himself, valuing the hiss and static. The imperfection of the 1989 recording was, to him, its greatest perfection. It was a reminder that true soul is messy, emotional, and often recorded with cheap equipment. John found that the profound silence after the song was more healing than any applause. The audience understood that moment was about reverence, not entertainment. Jimmy Fallon said that the segment completely changed his perspective on the potential of his show. He realized that his desk was not a barrier, but sometimes a pulpit for profound moments. The single phrase, "The soul remembers its song," became the mantra for the entire production staff. They learned that their primary job was to honor the sacred human stories that walked onto their stage. The experience deepened John's connection to his gospel roots and family history. He felt a direct, tangible link to his mother's youth and her pure, untainted musical dreams. The song was proof that the love between the two friends had created an eternal artifact. John's willingness to be vulnerable on air, to cry and then sing, was key to the moment's power. He showed the world that strength comes from openly embracing grief and memory. The audience's collective response, standing in silence, was the final unplanned masterpiece. It demonstrated universal empathy for the moment of shared loss and finding. The young woman, Angela's daughter, sent John a personal thank you note the next day. She wrote that she felt her mother's spirit finally found peace and completion. She thanked him not for his fame, but for his willingness to be his mother's son. John Legend now ensures that the original demo always plays, quietly, in his studio before any major recording session. It grounds him and reminds him of the true source of musical genius. The single cassette tape accomplished what years of therapy often cannot. It provided closure, connection, and a perfect final harmony. The camera zoomed out slowly, focusing on the empty piano bench and the silent stage. The studio lights slowly transitioned back from amber to soft, respectful white. The powerful silence was the final credit roll of the segment. John and Jimmy walked off together, neither speaking a word until they were fully backstage. The emotional intensity of the moment required its own decompression time. The show's ending was not an outro, but a long, meaningful fade into the night. The memory of the two mothers singing remains permanent in the walls of Studio 6B. It is a testament to the belief that love, indeed, teaches the silence how to sing. John Legend's career gained an entirely new, profound dimension that evening. He was redefined not just by his Grammys, but by a song that wasn't even his. The final beautiful act was the acceptance of his mother's emotional inheritance, and the world collectively agreed that some voices are simply too important to be lost to time. The applause finally came, but it was the sound of recognition, not entertainment. It was a final, perfect tribute to two friends who wrote a hymn about hope. The entire room felt cleansed by the raw, honest display of emotion. The segment became a masterclass in the power of empathy over celebrity, and the audience left feeling a deeper, more profound connection to their own memories. John Legend's tears were the final, necessary notes of the composition. The song, once a private treasure, became a shared global blessing. He ensured that the memory of Deborah Stevens and Angela's daughter was honored forever. The title, The Soul Remembers, is now his favorite song to perform live. Because every time he sings it, he is singing with his mother again. The simple cassette tape, rescued from an old box, accomplished its destiny. It brought two worlds, the past and the present, into perfect, healing harmony. John Legend learned that he was not the composer of the greatest song he would ever sing. He was merely the privileged conductor of its final movement. The memory of the shared vulnerability remained. It was a lesson in the profound beauty of human connection. The audience left inspired to find their own lost songs. The entire evening became a dedication to quiet, enduring love. John's commitment to recording the song was his final promise to his mother, a promise he kept with grace and profound dedication. The story of the church choir hymn echoed around the world, proving that a small song can carry a monumental weight of emotion. The power of the soul to remember its core truth resonated deeply. The segment elevated the standard for emotional honesty on television. It was a testament to the purity of shared musical beginnings. The final performance was a duet across the veil of time. John and the young woman shared a bond forged in music and loss, a bond stronger than any celebrity contract. The song found its true universal audience that night, and the world listened and understood. The love between the two mothers became immortalized through the powerful voice of their children. John Legend sat there transformed. He was no longer just the star, but a son receiving a final perfect gift. The camera lingered on the piano keys, the keys that taught the silence to sing. The memory of the static filled the professional sound room, a reminder of where true heart is found. The emotional experience was complete, and the applause finally was a blessing to the memory of Deborah and Angela. John Legend stood, his journey complete. He walked off, carrying the weight of a generation's hopes. His mother's song was heard, the mission was finished, the soul remembers,